So, here's a confusing video for you. This is a confusing video because I'm going to make it confusing. And the confusing part is, this is confusing. Wait, don't confusingly click away. We've got a whole load of confusing confusements to confuse your confused brain into getting confused beyond the confusing possibility of confusion. How we are going to confusingly make a confusing video is to confusingly say confusing and its confusingly numerous variants. It sure is confusing to confusingly script a confusing video, and it confuses you even more when it sounds like confusing is getting weirder and weirder. No, this isn't confusingly meant to make any confusing sense, and your confusingly confused person will be confusingly confused enough to try and confusingly click off this confusing video. But you confusingly can't, because you confusingly clicked on this video, and so you must confusingly stay here, confused, until the confusing end screen, when you can then confusingly leave your confused confuzzlements behind. We've confusingly sped up this confusing video so that you will be even more confusingly confused, but the end of this confusing video will be confusingly sooner. The confusing concept of speed and time are confusingly confusing, don't you confusingly think? Anyway, if you're confusingly struggling to confusedly understand the confusing text that is confusingly appearing through your confusingly manufactured speakers, turn on confusing subtitles. Do we have anything else to confusingly say? Well, it's confusing to confuse between confusingly finished and confusingly not. Confusingly enough, we have more to say. Yes, I'm confusingly going to confuse you for at least another confusing minute. But no, confusingly you are confused to this confusing video, because, confusingly enough, we are hypnotizing you with the confusing word confusing. Good confusing gracious, will this ever confusingly stop? Well, confusingly, it might confusingly have to, for the confusing space-time confusements are malfunctioning in the confusing shadow of the confuzzlements you have been presented with. You know what, despite the confusing confusements that are confusingly appearing out of your confusing screen, we have confusedly decided to confuse you with something else, but, confusingly. It will still be confusing. Very confusing, as you will find out, because it is a confusingly fast car that was confusingly curated by the confusing video editor who may confusingly be losing his confusing mind. The confusing process to reconfuse a confusing human who has been confused beyond the confusing possibility of confusing space-time, as confusingly mentioned, is very confusing and takes a confusing amount of time to confuse what to reconfuse a deconfuzzled human being with, let alone doing the confusing reconfusing itself. But, confusingly, the confused editor stays, confused, in his confusing editing chair. This car can reach confusing speeds, with a confusingly fast rate of passing out of deconfuzzleness, I mean speeding confusingly up. The confusing doors on this confusing vehicle are very confusingly shaped and confusingly open at a confusingly confused angle. Imagine a confused celebrity's car confusingly opened the confused doors like that confusingly well-dressed confused man would get hit in his confused face by such a confusing door. And now, here's a confusing shape. This confusing voice is confusingly getting tired, so look at this in a confused manner, like this confused guy. And try and reconfuzzle yourself before you get so deconfuzzled you have to go to a confusing hospital that is confusingly located on the moon. Confusingly enough, this is the end of this video. Go back and count how many confuses we said, and leave a like and subscribe for less confusing content. See you confusingly soon.